The honourable member for Timmins-James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 5 months since Canadians learned about the secret deal between Mike Duffy and Nigel Wright. When we learned in May there was one check, and then past week, we learned there was a second check from Conservative Party donors to cover off Mike Duffy's legal fees. So does the government know how many checks Mike Duffy received and how many checks were handled by the Prime Minister's office? It should be a simple question to answer.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Again, Mr. Speaker, as I've said on a number of occasions, this party does provide legal assistance for the members of its caucus if it's required. It doesn't change the fact that what Mike Duffy did in accepting expenses, which he did not earn, was wrong. It doesn't change the fact that Nigel Wright, in paying those expenses, was wrong. The Prime Minister stated on a number of occasions that had he known, he would have in no way accepted this particular scheme, Mr. Speaker. And right now we have a motion in front of the Senate that will give us accountability for these actions. It is only the Liberals and the NDP who are trying to make victims out of these three senators and disgrace former Liberal Senator Matt Carn. We're on the side of Canadian taxpayers, Mr. Speaker. That's where we're comfortable, and that's where we'll always be.
Honourable member for Timmins-James Bay.
Thank you. Well, it wasn't all that difficult to question how many checks were there. So let's try a quote from this Prime Minister when he was taking on Liberal corruption. Quote, "My difficulty with the Prime Minister is I don't think he has been honest on fairly straight, simple questions when there appear to be contradictions. When somebody doesn't answer questions in a straightforward manner, there may be something else." So let's talk about that something else. Will the government tell us when the Prime Minister last spoke to Arthur Hamilton to find out the nature of Mike Duffy's legal fees and whether it was appropriate to use the money of Conservative donors?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Talk about flip-flopping all over the place, Mr. Speaker. No wonder my daughters don't like clowns. Mr. Speaker, this is the party that wanted to actually form a coalition with the Liberals. They now call them very corrupt. They're an awful party, but as long as you give us 6 cabinet seats, we'll be okay with you, Mr. Speaker. Give me a break, Mr. Speaker. This is about Nigel Wright paying off the debts that Mike Duffy did not incur, Mr. Speaker. It's time for some accountability in the Senate. We've made great progress on that. The Liberals in the Senate need to get out of the way so that the senators can pass this motion so that we can get that accountability that Canadians want.
The honourable member for Timmins-James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Halloween, I'm sure his daughters are going to have a wonderful time, and my daughters are wonderful too, but I would never use them to hide behind corruption.
No.
Never. So let's find out why they are not being forthright. Was it because this Prime Minister told his base that he would clean up Ottawa instead? He took the cushy Conservative insiders and gave them lifetime appointments, that he sat on a cover-up in his own office, and that he allowed these Conservatives to break all the rules. What happened to that man who promised Canadians that he would make a better country and clean up the corruption of Ottawa? What happened to that turn?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Tell you what happened to that man, Mr. Speaker. He's been in this chamber. He's been in this chamber and the head of a government that has created 1 million new jobs for Canadians. He's opening up new markets and signing one of the biggest trade deals in Canadian history, opening up a market of 500 million people to Canadian consumers, Mr. Speaker. He's making our communities safer, Mr. Speaker. He's re-equipping our armed forces, Mr. Speaker. He has respect for the Canadian taxpayers. We've reduced taxes from the GST from 7 to 6 to 5%. And while they talk about the middle class and vote against it constantly, we support the middle class. We support accountability. That's what this Prime Minister is all about, Mr. Speaker, the Canadian people.